We now turn our attention to the world news with Mike Walter.
Thanks so much, Phil. Kazakhstan is the focus of the world's interest in Iran's nuclear program. International negotiators are meeting there with Iran, bringing with them some new proposals in the hopes of breaking the stalemate. That deadlock has existed since their last meeting in July of 2012. Tuesday's talks were described as useful, and there will be another meeting on Wednesday.
There was a discussion lasting about 2.5 hours, and then the Iranians went away to consider our proposal. There were further discussions during the course of the afternoon and the evening, and there will be another plenary tomorrow at which we hope we will get some more detailed feedback on our proposal.
The Iranian delegation has been told that they are in breach of their international obligations. Those were outlined in the UN Security Council resolutions and reports from the IAEA, the P5+1 nations, the US, UK, France, China, Russia, and Germany, say the onus is on the Iranians to bring themselves in line with their obligations. Joining me now with talk a little bit more about the direction of these talks is Jamal Abdi. He's policy director at the National Iranian American Council here in Washington, D.C. And it's interesting when you hear words like useful. We found the talks useful. Those aren't like neon sign type statements. Kind of muted. How would you describe them?
I really think that all sides in the talks really sought to play down expectations and to really not present this as a round of negotiations that was going to bring about any sort of immediate resolution, any sort of immediate deliverable, but instead to set up this process with a sort of mindfulness that this is a, entrenched issue that's going to take time to dig ourselves out of, and so we're going to need to have prolonged talks in order to actually do that.
So the carrot in the proposal offers the easing of international sanctions against Iran in exchange for some limiting on the uranium enrichment. Is that something you think Iran would go for?
I think that this is actually a potential initial deal. If the United States and its partners are willing to give up those sanctions, that's what Iran really has been looking for. There was a round of talks about a year ago. They did not yield anything, and part of that was because the U.S. was in an election cycle. The president was up for re-election. There was not a lot of flexibility to actually give up sanctions in exchange for what we were asking the Iranians to do. Now there is a little bit of flexibility on the U.S. and the P5+1 side. The question is, on the Iranian side, they're now heading into elections. Are they going to have the flexibility to deal on their end of the equation?
You know, when you think about this conflict that's going on, this argument, disagreement, one always thinks about the UN presentation of Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, with that bomb and the threat of force that still kind of lingers out there. Is that hampering the talks? Is that likely to create some kind of concessions on the part of the Iranians, or will they dig their heels in as a result of this?
Well, one of the things that the P5+1 is asking of Iran is that they close this Fordow facility, which is their bunkered nuclear facility. Now, for Iran, the reason they have that facility is because it's, essentially unbombable, or it's very difficult to bomb. When you have the threat of military action presented against Iran, that actually creates a pretty big incentive for Iran to not close that facility. So I think in order to get to the end of this process, or at least get to a medium point where Iran has satisfied sort of these initial demands, we're going to have to figure out a way to take that threat of military action off the table to convince Iran they don't need to have a facility that is bunkered and immune to such strikes.
Let's take a step back to what you talked about earlier, the election in Iran. Are we likely to see much of a change we'll obviously see a change in leadership, but will we see a change in direction, would you say?
In terms of the nuclear issue, I think that there's a pretty united consensus among Iran's population. There was recently a poll that did suggest that Iranians, by and large, support the nuclear program. They don't necessarily support nuclear weaponization, but they support the program. They feel that there are, the sanctions have cost them pretty significantly, but they don't want to capitulate on that issue. They feel that it's a matter sort of national sovereignty, of national technological advancement. So there's that issue. And then within the leadership, really the question is, where does the supreme leader stand? The president himself, Ahmadinejad, as much as they put his image out there, he's not really making the big decisions. The question is, will the supreme leader sign on to a deal around the nuclear issue? And so I think that really it's a matter of, can the Iranians get some sort of political equilibrium internally to be able to make those tough decisions on the nuclear issue?
Jamal, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in. Certainly appreciate it.
My pleasure.